Hey,
I went home and slept for 3 hours.
did you really?
Yeah.
Do you feel sick?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I think I have a fever.
Oh no, really?
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, Abby took a nap with me and I woke up about 45 minutes later than I was supposed to, which is why I wasn't here at 5 o'clock like I wanted to be.
Was who slept longer, you or her?
Huh?
Who slept longer, you or her?
Me, she woke me up.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
Aw. Well, that's not good. You gotta take some
I
time.
know. It's all right though. I'll get over it. I mean, she was sick for 4 days, so 4 days I'll be better.
4 days, they'll be better. That's right. Well, Ralph and Steve there, I told them to leave. They leave?
No, they're logged in right now as an attendee.
Oh, no, were they there in the office when you got there?
No, they listened. They left.
That's good.
Fault. I should have been here earlier.
Where's everybody else?
Well, they'll be here. We still have 4 minutes.
Yes.
Jay's here and Mark's here. Hey, Jay.
Hey Jay, I got your envelope. Sorry about that.
Hey, Bo.
I took 2 packets out of the mailbox and realized I had yours, Jay, and I went to put yours back and I put mine.
Somebody suggested to me that you had taken mine, so I took yours. Worked out.
Yeah.
Hi, Jen.
I still don't see Donna on here, so I guess we'll give it a few more minutes.
I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, but my internet's lousy.
Is it ever good?
Well, it says it's full strength, like excellent internet, but yet I only hear one word here and there.
Bo, I had that same issue at my house with the town laptop that I've been using at home when I've been remotely logging in. And this week, I found out through our Ion company, our tech company, that it's in fact the computer.
It's the computer.
Yeah, so I'm not able to remotely log in. It doesn't hold a connection. It's the computer itself. So I don't know if maybe that could be an easy solution
Well,
for you.
it's yeah.
All right, I just
Called the
promoted Donna
hammer.
to panelist, so hopefully she'll be in a minute.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had technical difficulties. But I gotta go in now. So everybody's here. Let's do a quick roll call. Vika,
I'm here.
Mark,
Here.
Jay,
Here,
Jen,
Here.
Bo,
Here.
Christine.
Here,
Okay, we can, and you can all hear me? Okay, so
Somewhat.
we're all set and ready to go. Thank you. All right, so the first thing on the agenda would be items that are public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have anyone I'm looking at the list right now, anyone have their hand up who have a question? Okay, I do not see anyone's hand up. All right, so we're going to move right on to the town administrator's report and then the various department reports after that.
Good evening, everyone. So I don't have a whole lot on the town administrator's report tonight. A lot of the things are still kind of ongoing. The boat engine update, we haven't been able to find anything yet. I did talk to somebody who is in the business, and they seem to think that what we've set aside for the $6,700 is probably not going to be enough in the current market. So that's a topic, to discuss for another day. The bookkeeper search, we've had a number of applicants submit through Indeed. But when I follow up, nobody is interested. So it looks like people are just applying for the sake of applying at this point. Budget workshop, we are going to have an extra budget workshop that is going to be held next Wednesday, March 9th. We've fallen a little bit behind with our budget discussion. And so instead of having a third draft tonight, we're going to focus specifically on the fire department, which we haven't had a chance to discuss. And then next week, we will have a full budget discussion. The dredging update, we finally have some good news as of today. The barge and not the barge rather, but the dredge machine and another boat have left Boston Harbor, which has been the delay due to weather. And they're expected to be here by 7:30 tomorrow morning. And they're anticipating, if all goes well, that barging will begin by Friday or Saturday of this week. So that's been anxiously waiting. Indian Island or Indian Point Road, hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll have an update to the selectmen about any potential ideas of anything that could be done on there. And then another thing that wasn't on my town administrator report is I've sat in on a couple of different webinars on the ARPA grant that we've received through the state. We have a little over $16,000 now. We have an additional $16,000 that we'll be receiving within the new fiscal year. Right now, the suggestion from MMA Legal is if you don't have a specific project that you can qualify or that you need it for, the money's not going anywhere. We just kind of can hold on to it and sit on it until we find something that we need. I do still have to have a report in at the end of April to say that we don't have any ongoing projects that we're looking to use it for. There are some very specific details about what it can and cannot be used, and it just comes down to the language that you use. One of the things that, you know, an example that they've brought up is doing some work within municipal buildings to improve them, whether it's air circulation or something like, you know, the 400 amp that we've been talking about, that the public safety building needs, that with the proper language could qualify on it. So there is a variety of different things that people have used it on. You just have to be creative and it has to fall within a certain category. So, but needless to say, we're not in a rush to have to use that money for anything. We have until 2023 to make that decision. So that's kind of the update on that. And unless anybody has any questions, that's all I had on the town administrator's report. Jen?
Can you just tell me what kind of grant was that again? I didn't hear you.
So this is the grant that came out when COVID first hit. It's the a lot of municipalities, big municipalities, received you know, millions of dollars to support through the COVID process. A lot of people put it towards allowing employees who were you know, essential workers to be able to work through that process. What we received is we received a little over $16,000. And then come July 1st, we will receive an additional $16,000, but there are very
was
specific
it?
limitations. I'm sorry,
Sorry, what was it called?
ARPA. And it's, yeah, I can send you some, I have some very basic kind of definitions from Maine Municipal that they sent that kind of goes the outline of what it is, what it can and cannot be used for. But there's very specific stipulations for what we can and cannot use that money for. And so right now, because a lot of people are using it for specific things, the state is requiring that we report what we use that money on, and we have to kind of go through almost an application process to be able to justify what we needed that money for. We didn't have a specific amount that, you know, the state decided what we were going to receive based on our size.
Thank you.
Vika?
Yeah.
I was on a Cumberland County or a selectmen and council chair meeting the other day with COG, and it was interesting because Durham was on there, and Durham is a tiny little town. I mean, not as tiny as us, but their budget's not an awful lot more than ours, and they got $400,000 and they couldn't figure out what to do with it. And so I suggested if they had extra, they could give it to us, but I don't know that would work. It was so interesting to hear the different towns and how they got what they got. I mean, it was ridiculous how little we got. But one of the things they did talk about, they talked about broadband, they talked about housing, they talked about sewage treatment plants and all that. And being so beginning, they said they had, really reworked it more flexible. But I couldn't believe that they couldn't figure out how to use that money. But thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions of Vika about her report? Mark?
Just very quickly, Vika and the other 4 select individuals. Next Wednesday, are we focusing on departments only? Is that what we decided?
Yeah, we're gonna go through all of the departments. So we were supposed to have, today was supposed to be our 3rd budget discussion, but because we kind of skimmed through the 2nd one very quickly, next week will kind of be the official 2nd draft of us going through all of the departments again.
Okay, so we will not be talking capital. That's my point, right?
It is not planned to be, correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question of Vika before she becomes the treasurer? Oh, Bo.
Sorry. I was wondering about if they got the extension for the dredging. I know they were applying to the state for another extension till March 15 or something.
I have not heard from Mark Habel. Have you, Vika?
No, the last email I received was them saying that they were gonna attempt to apply for the second week in April, but I have not heard anything about them receiving an extension for anything other than what
Okay.
they have to work with now.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone in the audience have a question of Vika? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the treasurer's report.
So I did have time this week to type up a treasurer's report, and that is my fault, or actually I'm gonna blame my sick child for that one. But Marjorie was here last week, so we are caught up, and our bookkeeping and our finances are reconciled through the end of January. And so in the next meeting, I'll have those numbers typed up and presented to you.
Okay. Have you had any luck with the auditor?
No, I haven't. So I've actually, and I should have put that on this report, and I apologize for not doing that. I
Oh, no
contacted the
problem.
state. The state said that they can't help us, that it's something that we need to contact Maine Municipal. I contacted Maine Municipal. Municipal say that it's something that the state should help us with. And so they're just kind of throwing me back and forth between the two of them. The state did say that if it comes to a worst case scenario where we can't find anybody, that they'll try to help us, but try to look a little harder, basically, is what she said. The company that does auditing for Long Island, I have had a number of emails back and forth with them, and I don't remember their company off the top of my head. But he asked for our last audit. I provided that, and then he had an additional couple follow-up questions, and I provided those. He said that they're pretty well booked right now, and they probably won't have any space to squeeze us in. And so the last email that I sent out to him was at the beginning of this week, just basically begging for them to find some space for us if they were able to, because we don't have our 2021 audit complete yet. So I haven't heard back from him, but so far, just like with the boat engine and bookkeeping position, we're striking out.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else have anything about for the treasurer? All right, moving along. You had a couple of reports. I think we have them in our packet for the harbor master and the public works. Anybody on the board have a question about those reports that were in the packet? All right, seeing none. Anyone in the audience who might have looked at the packet? Okay, no one has a comment. And, oh, wait a second, there's somebody, Jonathan Camlosi.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Hi. I was just wondering, the selectmen just did a tour of the public works. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes,
we
it was
did.
about a month ago.
A couple of
And,
them did.
Okay. I've just, I remember back when I was on the committee with Stephen Todd, and when we were back in 2007, and, we were discussing whether or not to use, have just a town crew, or whether or not to have subcontractors. My main concern is that, like, the Stone Wharf has got just a ton of repairs to be done, and this needs to be done on a daily, weekly basis as things break down, just like potholes on the road. And I know the barge landing, the cement boards, the planks are are moving out, and nobody's tried to pull them back or put new bolts in them. I mean, some of it can just be done with a I could do it with a tractor, with forklift, with the front forks, and put bolts in and stuff. But like once they start, there are a couple different issues. One is that once they start dredging, even if they're dredging 20 or 30 feet off the stone wharf, according to the plan, the cement board planks that are loose are going to move. And so the town really needs to consider this summer, this spring, some repairs to that barge ramp, because that's the first thing that's going to start to go after the dredging is completed. And I'm only bringing this up. I know it's a dredging thing, but it's that town ramp the barge landing has been needed to be worked on like for the past 2 years, and none of it's getting done. And I know that there are regular coastal water meetings. My point is, I'm not trying to point the finger at Public Works and say, it's almost like we need a committee for Public Works, like the coastal waters or something, or like the road commission, so that, because I'm not sure, I mean, administratively, if you look at the setup, like if it should have been just Marjorie talking to town Public Works, or if it's just Vika talking to Public Works, it's,
Jonathan, can I clarify? Yep. They are the road commissioner, and we really appreciate your input, because I think, you've raised some good issues. And I think Vika will take that under advisement. And I agree that there needs to be work done on the barge ramp to stabilize it. We've talked about that. And so thank you for bringing it to our attention. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I almost feel like as a town, we need to take a step back and look at Public Works and come up with a real decision. Like, are they supposed to do everything, or are we going to start subbing this out? Because I don't see, and I'm not trying to be negative, in the right framework, I would say, yeah, like expand the town hall, but how are we going to do that and maintain the stone wharf, which we're not maintaining? You can't, there's planks that need to be repaired on the wave break every summer. Last 2 years when the floats went in, Teddy Houghton was down there screwing in all the float planks, the boards on top, so that because they were, there was probably 16 planks loose after they put them in the water. And so, and there's also preventative maintenance, like for instance,
okay, you know what? Maybe what would be a good idea is if you make an appointment with Vika, because this is more than we can handle in public discussion. Okay. Because it really is not to solve the problem. It's just to identify the problem. I think you've identified it. And what I would suggest is you call Vika and set up an appointment.
Okay. I'm not trying to single out. I just think
we understand. I understand where you're coming from. I'm just trying to, figure out the right protocol, because we really, Vika is in charge of the operation. She's the road commissioner, and we are there to support her and to allocate money. We do subcontract out some things, but that would be great if give her a call.
Okay, fine. The only thing I'm just going to say one more thing, and that is, like, when we get new equipment, we ought to undercoat all the town vehicles so that they last longer and don't rust out. It should be a spec for purchase. Before we purchase any vehicle, it includes undercoating, so that, because I've been watching the town vehicles, and, if a lot of other island vehicles get undercoated and they last a lot longer, it would just be beneficial.
We just did that on our new truck. Yep.
Great.
We're on it.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, I'm playing catch up.
No problem. No problem. Thank you very much. We appreciate your input and everyone's input. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to regular business. All right. The first item, 22-021, is to consider funding half of the cost of a waiting shed on the stone wharf. This was brought to us, our attention, by Matt Ridgway from CTC. And I know that Mark and Vika went up and looked exactly where they were looking. From what I could tell from talking to Vika, it's where the old oil tanks used to be, which was really tucked away and not where there's any parking or kind of in the way. So I think that was the location. In the packet, we had a picture of what the building, what it would look like. And I think the purpose of this was multiple fold. One was for people to wait if they were waiting to get on the boat and they got down there before you could get on the boat, because now they're not allowed on until just before you get on. And if the weather's bad, people get wet. And the other item was that it could be used for the harbor master. And also there are people who are workmen or whatever who get dropped off and don't really have a car there to wait in. And so this was the idea. And Vika, do you have a number, a final number?
Yeah, so that's something that it should have been in your packet, and it was a quote that Matt forwarded to me that was sent directly from the company that he worked with to get the shed for Route 1. And so that estimate came out without tax at $6,137. And CTC is willing to split the cost with us on that, and also cover the cost of the barging of getting the temporary shed out to Shebig.
Does the town have to pay tax, or are we tax exempt?
We're exempt, so I would just need to sign a certificate in the time of purchase and hand it to them, and they would have to take the tax off.
Okay, so it would be about approximately, you're talking about 6,200, so it would be 3,100 a piece, right? And CTC said they will do the barging. And are there any other costs involved?
I mean, it's, I think.
Matt's on
So-
here. All right, I saw him a while ago. Now I don't see him. I see John Rent. Maybe John Rent could answer this.
Well, what I have is Matt is in attendance, and he's the one
yeah,
who's
okay.
who's been.
Oh, I see him now. We've got more people on here, so I didn't see him on my list. Okay.
Yeah, we
yeah,
have a
maybe-
good crowd.
Yeah, maybe Matt could come on.
Let me. Matt, you have permission to talk if you want to weigh in.
Sure, I think I can answer the question. I don't think there would be any other associated cost. There certainly weren't with the shed that we just had delivered to Route 1 today. They know where the location is of the town of Shebig, and they know that there's a barge trip involved. So it's all, the delivery is all included in that fee. And they essentially, I saw it done today. It's the first time I saw them deliver a shed, and they basically, back the truck down and place it exactly where you want it, move it around, level it, and that's it. It was pretty quick. So,
Am I correct that it's where the old oil tanks used to be?
well, yeah, Donna, it's right where you and I and Justin looked at, and then Mark, I think maybe looked at it, I guess, and then and Vika and Gennaro and I were just down there last week looking at it, and basically it would be from where the power is down there now, the outlets in the meter, in other words, and from there it would go out 10 feet, which is about to that Jersey barrier that protects the power meter, and then it goes over to basically the inboard side of the bike rack. So essentially, space wise, I don't think it's taken up any space that anybody's using. And I think actually that bike rack was turned, so it was parallel with the pier. I think the bike rack would actually free up a little bit of space on the corner of the pier as well. So.
Okay, so
And I'm happy to answer any questions that I can about the shed that we just bought. And, I got this estimate done because Vika asked me to, and anything that's on there can be changed. We want kind of standard 4 windows, 1 on each side, 1 door, and I think it's pretty basic.
Yeah, so my big question is, we're in this process looking at the stone wharf for a master plan. And could that be moved and be utilized in that plan to another location if that was deemed,
It
necessary?
can be. So the whole point with this particular shed, and I had spoken to our code enforcement officer who was out here all day yesterday. It is a temporary structure. It would be fastened with chains or somehow, fastened. So then if we get overflow or heavy winds, it doesn't just tip over on us. But it is a temporary structure. And where it would be and how it would be permitted, it is something that the code enforcement officer can permit. He is allowed to do, and it being a permanent or temporary structure, it is movable. And so I actually have, what I'm going to do is I have Matt sent me a picture of the shed that they just received. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
And so this is the shed that just arrived at Route 1. And so if you envision this exact structure at the stone pier, what it would do, it would look just like this. And this section right here would be facing CTC. So the boat would be right here. And then the ramps would be, where you can see my arrow, you'd be coming up from the seasonal ramps over to the left of it. The difference would be is instead of having a window here like CTC has, this is where a door would go. And so you would go inside and it would have benches just like the ones on Cousins Island to accommodate seating. And then where this window is basically this window would be right up against where the CMP power is currently. And so what we would do is we would put a bulletin board on the inside, and we would put the scan system. And so when people for seasonal boaters or for pleasure boats, when they would come up the ramp, they would be able to see this shed and scan and pay for any tie up that they need to there. But then also people can wait in here for the boats and then see, visually see CTC right away if they need to. So that's kind of the idea behind that.
Thank you, Vika. So what you're saying is this would be an opportunity for, we could put whatever the lockbox is that we use for collecting fees where sometimes people are confused. That could be right there, and we could have a sign there that would be very clear. If
Yes, I would try. I would want to kind of maximize its use for a couple of different things. So put the, harbor master information on the inside, and then allow people to be able to sit there and wait for the boat if they need to. And then when the harbor master is at the stone pier or the police officer, instead of, I know one of the concerns that we hear is that he kind of just parks in the middle of the place and he ends up causing more of a traffic if he just parks in a parking spot or pulls up at the end of the stone pier, and his presence could be there. So it could be used for a number of different things.
Okay. And so in most of the concept plans that we've had over the last 52 years, there's been some kind of a waiting room as part of it. So one way to look at this is this could save us $3,100 in a bigger project. I guess that's one way to, if CTC is willing to pay for half of it. Is that kind
that, or if you decide, the one thing with this is it doesn't have to sit on any kind of cement blocks. There doesn't have to be a foundation. So if you decide that it needs to be used for something else, it could be used. That was the whole reason behind it, is that it is a temporary structure. It is going to be easily moved if needed.
And even to another use that wasn't even on the wharf, perhaps in the future. That
That's
could
true.
be. Okay, so now I'd like to open it up to the board. Bo has gone to the rec center. He has lost his internet. And so we're not going to make any decisions till he gets back. But if people have questions or comments that they'd like to make who are on the board, we might as well just carry on the conversation and we can recap when he gets back. Anyone have a question of Matt or Vika?
I just was hoping to add one thing as far as additional cost, just, so it's totally transparent. I thought I was, so the shed that we bought for Route 1 for our purposes, we had it wired, pre-wired, and that pre-wiring is included in the estimate that shed happens, provided that you guys have. So one cost that we're going to incur at the Route 1 parking lot is just hooking that up to an electrical supply. So depending on, whether the town wanted to add electricity there, I mean, electricity is right there. I think it'd be pretty simple and a small cost, and it would add the ability to, maybe install a heater at some point or something like that, like we did at the freight shed. So I think it might be a good idea to have it kind of come pre-wired, but if you did want to hook it up to electricity, that would be an additional, probably, fairly small cost, but it would be a cost.
Okay, that's something to think about. We don't, so what do people on the board think about this right now? Do you have any questions? My internet now is unstable as well, so has it been in the audience who has a question? Okay, I guess, oh, wait a second, here we have Suzanne
We
Rowe.
do have a couple of people in the audience who have
Suzanne
questions.
Rowe.
All right, let me get, all right, Suzanne or Aaron, you guys are good to go.
Okay, can you hear me? I think you can.
Yes, we can.
It's Suzanne, and I came in a little late because I had to drop somebody at the boat, but what is the purpose of the shed? I mean, is it for storage of items or is it for people?
Okay, I can explain because we did talk about that, Suzanne, so
Give me the quick version. I don't want to take a lot of time about it.
Oh, no, that's okay. No, that's fine. So the idea is that now that people can't get on the boat, like 20 minutes early or whatever, and people get down there, especially older people who want to find a parking space,
yeah,
and they're afraid they're going to miss the boat, they could go in there and wait. A lot of workmen who go down there, they don't have a car.
Okay, so it's for people to sit in. Okay, that's all you need to
sit in. But also the other issues, Gennaro could use it if the weather was bad and he was at the Stone Wharf. I mean, not bad, but say it was raining. He can have a lockbox there, and we can have a big sign to collect money from the recreational boaters who come in.
Right. Okay.
A bunch of stuff like that.
Okay, that was my one question. My thought about that is that I would rather sit in my own car with my heater going instead of going and sitting somewhere where there was no heat. And I hear you're saying that maybe at some point you might put heat in, but it seems like, I don't know, it seems like money that we might, is it really necessary that we put a shed down there, I guess is my thinking. And my other thought about that is you talked about at some point you could move it because it's not going to be permanent. So whose is it? Is it the town's or is it CTC shed? So where would it be going? Would it be going to the,
well,
town?
The main reason for moving it would be when we have the master, when we create the master plan for the wharf and the rebuilding, it may be that the CTC flow, where the ramp connects to the wharf may move. So we might want to move it to the other end.
Okay.
And then people were thinking outside the box that if it wasn't needed on the wharf at some point, or say we got a different facility, you could always use it someplace else. People were just brainstorming. But the main reason for having it be movable would be because we don't know how the wharf is going to be reconfigured in the plan. We're still in the planning stages. Does that help?
It helps. Yeah. It seems like, I don't know, it seems like a lot of money for a seat down there, but I guess that's just my 2 cents. So that's all. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
I have a hand raised by somebody who looks like they're on the phone, which I'm going to promote them to a panelist because I'm hoping it's maybe Bo. And then while I'm doing that, there was a question that was raised by Justin Dougherty that said, I have a few questions. What happened to the old shed structure that was in the same spot years ago? The only thing that I can comment on that, the only knowledge I know is that an old town clerk, from my understanding, removed it without having any approval from any of the selectmen. That's really all I know. So it was removed, and I have no idea where it is or what happened.
I think that what happened is it was actually the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the person who did it, authorized it. It had been damaged. And so it was a unilateral decision, and that's what happened to it. We had it for a long time. It was not a general board meeting. I mean, the rest of the board did not have a chance to weigh in before it was gone, but it become damaged. I think it got knocked over or something in a storm. I don't know if that helps. All right, I see. I think Jackie's the one you elevated. It wasn't Bo.
Yeah, I
Jackie,
did.
do you have any questions?
So let me find her again.
Okay, so I see Jonathan's hand up. And oh, there's Bo. Bo's back.
Jonathan Komlosi had a suggestion. Why not use CTC shuttle bus parked on Wharf portable? And so the CTC shuttle bus is on Cousins Island. We're talking about on Shebig.
Yeah, this is on Shebig. This is not at Cousins Island. And just to let everyone know, a lot of people don't know. I was surprised. I was in the freight shed one day at Cousins Island, and people thought it belonged to the town of Shebig. It does not belong to the town of Shebig. It belongs to the town of Yarmouth. And the town of Shebig does not pay for the heat. They do not pay for the lights. They have not renovated it and put the windows in or the floors. That's all been CTC who has done that. So the amount of money that they've probably put in there is at least equal to where we would be contributing to this, and probably more. And they put new siding on that freight shed over there. And for me, it's much better than it was before, because at least the water doesn't come up through the holes and between the planks. Jonathan, did you want your hands up? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm gonna allow Jackie to talk first, because she did have her hand up first. So
okay,
Jackie, I'm sorry for promoting you to panelist. I thought that it was Bo, but you do have permission to talk if you want to say something.
Thank you, Vika. You can hear me?
yes.
We can.
I have a vested interest in knowing which barge the structure might come on.
The CTC barge,
Okay, thanks.
because they're going to pay for it. So I assume that they're not hiring Coley to bring, but you never know. They might be. I assume it's when the barge goes off. I mean, I'm just making that up, but that's just my thought. Do you need a barge?
Do I need a barge?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, you
no.
thought it was going to come by your house and you wanted to sell tickets. I know. Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, you may remember that I've had issues with prefab structures coming by my house on, that is taking out shrubbery.
Right. No, I do know that. I'm just being wise. I'm sorry. I'm not being professional. I'm just being a wise guy.
That was the reason for my question.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Jonathan Komlosi and then Courtney Doughty. Yes,
Jonathan, you're all set.
Okay. Every steel boat that CTC's had built has a furnace and surrounding radiator heat for the purpose of maintaining a safe, warm waiting area on each boat. The existing boat, the Independence, they have lockable bridge wheelhouses. So I'm not quite sure why there's a push to not have passengers on board between boats.
I think they have to have staff on there. They can't have people. I think it's a Coast Guard. Matt can weigh in on this, but I think it's a Coast Guard regulation that you can't have boat.
So, I mean, why does the staff have to leave? Why can't they stay on the boat? I
I
know that
just
this,
allowed Matt to talk, but I just want to point out that this is probably not the environment to have the discussion about what CTC can and cannot do. This is.
I
more of a
know, but
discussion
what
about
I'm
the
saying
shed.
is I haven't heard anything from CTC in an agenda that's discussing this new policy. I mean, every single one of the CTC boats up to this point have always been built with the heaters on, with a furnace on board for the sole purpose of maintaining a warm environment for passengers between
Okay,
boats.
Jonathan, I
Yep.
think that you need to talk to Matt about that, but that would,
But I would say the other thing is that I don't understand why, like, use a shuttle bus. That way it's portable. You take one of the buses that CTC is not using, that they use in the summer for the winter purposes, and put it on the wharf. Then you can move it. I wouldn't necessarily put a building on unpinned granite when, we're supposed to try to, resolve the granite that's moving around on the stone wharf to begin with.
well,
And
we've
as
just
far
had
as
a,
the lock,
can I say something for a second? We've just had a stability study. The granite's not moving. So, okay, so you're not in favor of this, right?
but the other thing is that, like, the lockbox is kind of a thing of the past. You put a barcode up there that somebody takes a picture on their cell phone and you pay digitally. That's how all the restaurant menus and so forth, that's what you want to put out there.
Okay,
I
well,
do want to, Jonathan, I do want to say we do have that up there and people use it, but we also get, during the summertime, we get a lot of cash that still goes in. So my recommendation would not be to get rid of that.
Okay.
okay, so Justin Doughty.
All right, give me a minute. All right, Courtney,
Oh, I'm sorry, it
Justin.
was
we're
Courtney
good.
Doughty.
Can you hear me?
Oh, it is Justin. Okay, sorry.
Yes. Thank you. I was curious about what happened to the old shed because I remember the harbor master hanging out in there. And I do recall it being vandalized quite heavily and going away quickly. So I was curious about that. And then my other question was, Jonathan somewhat nailed it, and I didn't want to start a big debate, but I was just curious why we couldn't sit on the warm boat. And then thirdly, I understand it's not much money, but I think with everything coming up down the pike, it is not a priority for the town.
Okay, thank you. Matt, do you want to address the issue about why people can't be on the boat when there's not crew there?
I have Bob Ernest who has his hand up, so can I allow him to talk and then we'll ask Matt in?
I'd rather have Matt answer the question while it's right on the, while it's been asked.
Matt actually has permission to talk, so go for it, Matt.
Matt, are you there?
I am. It seems like my internet's coming in and out a little bit too.
I know,
but,
mine is too. I think Bo has started a virus.
Yeah. So I mean, all I can do is answer the question about passengers being allowed onto the boat when the boat crew is not there. The Coast Guard has told us flat out, but we really already knew that anytime you have passengers on the boat, you have to be fully staffed as per your certificate of inspection, which in our case is a captain and a deckhand. Without getting into the CTC operations too much, because I agree, I don't think this is the forum for that. There's times that the crew is either busy because they're doing training, they're doing maintenance on the boat, they're going home because they have to take a bathroom break, whatever. There's times when the boat crew is not going to be there to allow passengers on, and we feel like it is both professional and the right thing to do to have a predictable boarding time so people know exactly when they're going to be allowed to be on the boat. I think that's fairly typical of most ferry companies, most public transportation. So I don't think we're really out of step there. I think that as far as the need for it down there, basically, again, like I'll say the same thing I have the last couple selectmen meetings. I'm passing this on as a communication and feedback that we're hearing from our passengers who are not necessarily our regular commuters, but are the people that are, probably not going to be on this meeting, such as, summer people that get dropped off. A husband will drop off his wife and his kids, and they'll be sitting down there for half an hour while he takes the car back to the cottage, way far away, and rides his bike down or whatever. And when it's 90 degrees out and there's no shade, that can be uncomfortable. Same thing in the wintertime happens. So I know it's not going to be used by a lot of people that are probably on this meeting. I can tell you, I probably would never set foot in the place personally. And I don't set foot in the place over on the Cousins Wharf Road, but I think it's important for us as a town, and I don't want to advocate, too much one way or the other. But I think it's important for us as a town to, it's not just the year-round people that are part of the community. It's everybody, including workers that come out here to work and get dropped off, sometimes a half hour before the boat leaves in the wintertime. So, yeah, I'm again, happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, Bob Ernest.
Bob, you're all set.
Sorry, I'm still learning how to use the panel functionality for speakers and such. I would just advocate
We just lost you, Bob.
Oh, that was my fault. I'm sorry. I went to
Okay.
remove his hand, and I removed permission to talk.
Okay.
Sorry,
am I okay
Bob.
now? Yes, I would advocate against spending money on a shed, given that there is a structure already there, and knowing that we shouldn't be talking about CTC procedures at this point. I would suggest that where the crew gets there at 10 till now, if the crew was able to do the other business they needed to take care of and still get there at 20 before boat time, or even 25 minutes before boat time, that would take care of virtually all of the needs of a shed without adding a shed. If people could get on the boat 20 minutes before boat time instead of 10 minutes before boat time. And that would still give the crew plenty of time to go home and have lunch or bathroom breaks, that kind of thing. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Bob, I'm a little confused. You said there's already a structure there?
The boat.
Oh, the boat as the structure. Okay.
Yes. As Jonathan pointed out, there's an investment in heat on that structure, and it's already sitting there, and it would just be more efficient to utilize that structure rather than spend money on an additional structure that takes up more space in an already crowded environment.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you were here when they described where it was going, but it's kind of tucked in an area where there's no cars right now.
I do have Matt still there for a comment, if he wants to weigh in, but before he weighs in, we had a comment from Suzanne saying that there's concern about vandalism and about teens congregating in the structure, and that she's in agreement that it's not good use of town funds.
Thank you.
And we
Beverly,
do have Bev
Beverly
Johnson, who has her hand raised as well.
Yeah, so it was Matt, Mark, and Beverly.
All right, Matt, do you want to say something?
I don't think I really have anything much to say besides what I already said. I just again will say, this isn't the appropriate forum to talk about, CTC policies and procedures. I think so. I'm just not going to get into that. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, because can you take your hand down, or Vika can?
I will,
what we
yep.
called on you. Yep. Okay, Beverly Johnson.
Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with Matt on all the reasons why we should have some sort of structure there. I've seen people in the heat with little kids waiting for somebody to go go pick them up. I've seen people in the pouring rain. I've seen people with the snow, parking their cars, walking down and realizing they're 15 minutes early before they could get on. I just think it's a nice thing to have for the public. And I think it's important, especially when it's really hot and really raining and really miserable weather. And I've seen the kids waiting for the bus that didn't show up and waiting for somebody to come pick them up. And I think that would be something we should have. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. All right, is there anyone else on the,
No,
I don't
we're
see anybody
free
else
of
with a
hands
hand up.
right now.
Who?
We're free of hands right now.
Okay, great. All right, so is there anyone else on the board who would like to speak? Oh, Mark, and then Jen.
I'm not prepared to make a motion on this, to support putting the shed there, only because I think we're trying to figure out what to do with the stone wharf as a big picture. I don't think the shed's gonna get used, even if we purchase it. I do appreciate CTC and Matt Ridgway bringing us forward along with Vika to us, though. I just want to make sure you understand that I do appreciate this effort, and I do understand that there is a small need at times for something down there. But I think I just don't see it getting used that much by the public or the harbor master. And I think we're trying to figure out the bigger picture, and I'm just not prepared to support it at this time. I just wanted to explain that.
Jen?
Just a couple things. When this was first brought up, I spoke to my mother-in-law because she's one of those people that likes to leave her house very early. We're definitely not on the same schedule. And she likes to get down there very early. And I, told her about such a shed, and she looked at me and said, that would be a big waste of money. So that kind of was like, okay, if she doesn't think that, it would be used, I appreciate that. And also, this is going to be insulated. I assume it's not just a wall. I was trying to look at the work order. Yes, okay, it says that there's insulation. And I agree with Mark that, we have a lot of plans that are yet to be put into place and finalized and started. And I just don't think it's a necessary thing that we need to spend money on right now, especially when we have so many other things. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I'm not going to make a motion because I can tell there's nobody that's going to support it really here. But I do personally think that eventually we will have some kind of a structure there. I do think that there are people who will use it, and I think that the amount of money that we're talking about costing here in the scheme of things is not very much at all. And for people who have been standing out there, and I've only done it because I don't commute anymore, or I don't go to town as much anymore. But when I'm up there and it's freezing cold and you're standing there in a long line waiting to get on that boat, or it's raining in the summer and there's 30 people in front of you, I think it would be nice to have something up there. But I'm not going to beat a dead horse. So I think that unless somebody wants to make a motion, we're going to move on. All right. So the next item is to consider a design question for the Stone Wharf Road. And we had some maps in our packet, but I'm not sure. I had a hard time reading them. And I've asked Vika if she could share them. Were those the previous maps, or are they maps of what they're suggesting today? Because I couldn't read it. So.
What this is this is kind of a draft to what had been suggested. So I know I said this a couple of times before, but back in December, the board asked the previous town administrator to contact CV and Mahar and let them know that the board would like to see having parallel, or I'm sorry, angled parking on one side and a walkway on the other side. And so through my discussion with CV and Mahar about that, the question was raised about what would be the proposed pedestrian path. And the two options are going to be one that is going to be basically a portion of the road that will provide a less protection, but it will be, clearly marked on the same level as a regular road, or something comparable to what you see on Cousins Island as we're walking down from the boat, from the parking down to the boat, where it's more leveled, where it's more pronounced, where it's a little bit safer for pedestrian. What that does is it raises questions as far as the design of it. And the current information that CV and Mahar has isn't enough for them to be able to provide the detailed of the information that you would need and they would need to do that. If you decide that you want something with a curb, it's ultimately going to cost more money, and it's ultimately going to be something that is going to require additional survey work that we don't have. What we have is we have the survey work for the stone pier, but we don't have it further down up the road. That runs into the issue of needing some additional drainage and so forth and so forth. So what you as a board essentially need to determine is, through hiring CV and Mahar to do a construction of widening the road, do you want angle parking on one side and just a pedestrian walkway where it's the same level as the regular road? Or do you want to go deeper into it and do additional survey, spend more money to determine whether you want something that's going to be raised?
Okay, thank you. So those maps that were in there were not the new proposal. They were just for information.
And so what I can do, and I can share the screen with you real quick. And I don't know if it's any easier to see, but basically, can you see where I have the arrow pointed right now? So this is the area that we're talking about. It would be basically a pedestrian walkway where it's on the same level as the road, or it would be raised. And so I think what the board needs to decide is, do you want to spend more money to do additional surveying, potentially add more drainage and so forth to create that higher pedestrian walk? Or do you just want to keep a walkway on the same level as a road, have it be marked out, have it be lined out and so forth?
But this doesn't show the angled parking, right? That would be on the next plan that we get?
So this shows a very, very, so this is just a proposal once again. Oh, I stopped sharing, sorry.
So this
right
is
here, this is where it would be the proposed. So he didn't want to spend too much time in doing the design for the sake of spending too much money. These were the questions that were raised. Once you answer those questions, he will focus on the angled parking, and the angled parking would be on the same road where the parallel parking currently exists.
Well, I thought that we decided we didn't want it beyond the golf club road. So I think we have more than one decision here. Yes, Mark.
This is my perspective only. I don't want to spend more money on engineering and design. I don't want a raised curb design for a walkway like Cousins Island. I want just a marked out pedestrian walkway wherever we do a pedestrian walkway designed for the Stone Wharf and the Stone Wharf Road, which would be a 5 to 6 foot wide pedestrian marked out yellow walkway. As far as the angled parking, I thought we decided as you drive down to the Stone Wharf that the angled parking would be on the left side of the road next to the 6th green side. I thought that's what we decided to tell CV Mahar. Is that not correct?
That's what I thought too. And I thought that it was not going to go all the way up to the top. That shows it the whole length of the road.
Well, that can be debated. I can go either way with that. But I'm just telling you my preference for going back to CV Mahar is any design of a pedestrian walkway, I think should be the same level as the road, just marked out with yellow paint. Nothing raised, no more engineering, no more drainage research, no more surveying, all of that. And the angle parking, I think, should be on the south side as you're driving down on your left side. And we can debate tonight or later on whether we should ask them to design it up past the golf club road. But that's my thoughts.
The process that they have right now is, so the current, when you drive down to the stone wharf, the walkway would be on your right. You would drive down, you would turn around. When you turn around, when you're leaving the stone wharf, the current parallel parking is what then would become angled parking. So you would kind of, versus parallel parking, you would just kind of swipe into a spot, and then when you leave, you just back out and go. And so that was based on the motion from December. That was kind of the direction that they went with. And like I said, they weren't putting any more money or time and effort into designing that parallel parking spot, because the question was bigger to be raised about whether you wanted raised, more money expended and so forth on the actual pedestrian walkway or not.
Okay, so that's really what we're talking about right now. Jen?
Yes.
Yeah, I asked the question back then, but what's the maximum legal width of the road? And our
42 feet.
That's the maximum legal width.
Yes.
So 48 feet.
What? 42. It's 2.5 rods. It's not 3 rod. It's not a 3-rod road.
Okay. And I agree with Mark. I don't think we need to spend any more money with a raised pedestrian walkway. I think, just having it marked as a pedestrian walkway is 10 times better than anything we've had so far. And we don't need this money to spend the money to go up. That would just cause a lot more problems, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree. I think a level walkway just painted would be better in the long run. Not only the cost that they're asking to draw it up, but maintenance wise, the town crew, it's going to be easier to plow a flat surface than it would be a curb. I think a curb like over at Cousins Island is just a liability waiting to happen, ice wise and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo. Jay, do you have any comments, or are you ditto?
I'm unmuted now. I think that using the paint on a flat road works just fine. It's $5 a can for the paint. It goes a fair way. So redoing the lines doesn't cost that much. I think that sounds like a fine plan.
Yeah, I agree. We tried to convince the state not to put a sidewalk at Cousins Island, and it didn't work. They didn't go along with it, but I think it makes sense, especially for the plowing. And when I was reading their memo, it would cost more for drainage. The drainage is easier when there isn't something. One of the things I wondered about the map, it shows it, the plan, it shows it stopping where the cars are. I would think you'd still have a pedestrian walkway all the way, you'd have it lined all the way down through.
So when through speaking with CV and Mahar, the reason that he stopped where he did right now is because the understanding that there are current discussions with, with APRs about the redesign of the stone pier. And so the idea is that they would design what would be untouched with potential stone pier renovation. And so what this would do, it would kind of put it to our current state, something that could be used, something that could be functional, but it wouldn't be money spent if, they went ahead and designed a whole pedestrian through the stone pier, and then we ended up doing something else and changed it around. So
But how hard would that be to just put paint down, so that people could follow it? Because, the idea, the possibility of working at the Stone Wharf is that there probably won't even be construction, even if we stay on the fast track until 2024.
And that's something that they can do, but for this particular discussion to determine whether you wanted raised or
Right.
leveled, that's why it was.
That's
kind of
really
left
simple.
where it
Okay, we don't
was.
want to we're not redesigning it. I get it.
Yes.
Bo?
I was just gonna say, we just hired him for the road. So at that point, he's at the head of the wharf, so.
Not with he stopped the pedestrian walkway before you get to the dirt parking lot on the Holmbaum side. That was my point.
I understand, but they're,
Yeah.
with the talks and everything, that's still part of the wharf, so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. Mark?
I would be curious while they're drawing this up. If you go down and you turn around on the Stone Wharf and you come back up as if you're leaving the Stone Wharf, and now the angled parking would be on your right as you're exiting the Stone Wharf, how many angled spaces would be until the golf club road, and how many would be if it went the whole length of the road?
So how many angled versus parallel?
Now, how many angled spaces total would be on the widened road going up to the golf club road? And would there be, and how many more would you get if you continued all the way almost to the intersection of South Road?
It's a good point. So by consensus, I think we all agree that we don't want a regular sidewalk, that we just want something painted. So if that helps them, that is everybody on the same page?
Mhm.
Okay. I haven't seen anybody's hand up here. I've been scrolling up and down. All right.
Yep.
Great. So do you have the direction you need, Vika?
Yep, I will get in touch with him tomorrow, let him know. He, I think, was ultimately hoping for this to be the decision that you guys go with, because that will, in return, provide a quicker turnaround for them to be able to have something to present to you for a final drawing.
Okay, so we're moving on to 23. Misdescribed what this topic is. The problem is we have to put out a week in advance, and I was mixed up as to what was going to happen tonight. So this was supposed to say to receive a draft Stone Wharf structural evaluation. And I sent that out tonight. That came today. Everybody went up to talk about it. But the idea is that next few days, Vika was going to do it out, but as she said, she couldn't do it with a computer situation. But over the next few days, if you could go through that, if you have any questions or comments, could you please get those to Vika by Monday, March 7th, so that she can then forward those to the engineers so they can either incorporate them or deal with them when they make the presentation. The formal presentation of the final report will be on I believe it's the 16th. Our next meeting is March 16th. And so those that, if somebody in the community wants to see it, Vika probably can put that in a packet or something online so that people.
Yeah, we will add it to the packet and it'll be on the website tomorrow.
Yeah. And so it's just to let people know there's 2 documents and each one's about 80 pages long, or I don't know how many pages, but a lot of pages. And it's very technical, as we would expect. So anybody have any questions about that? Okay, seeing none. We're moving on now to consider returning to in-person select board meetings. Somehow, I don't know what was wrong with my head, and also, with the town office staff, all of us together forgot we decided that we should be in person. So for tonight. That was our original plan. So Vika has been doing research on how to create a hybrid. And in order for it to really work, to be able to do Zoom and everything else, we would need a community volunteer to help us. And because Vika has to be responding, Chris has to be taking notes, I have to be running the meeting, the rest of the board has to be paying attention, and we need somebody who would monitor it. If we don't do that, then we're going to go back to using the owl, I think. So I'm going to turn it over to Vika. She knows she's got it figured out how we'll do it and how the public will be able to activate it.
Yeah, so the way that the currently Board of Selectmen through this COVID process, the rare occasion that Board of Selectmen were in person, there was a piece of machine called the owl that was set up, and when a board member spoke, that would kind of zoom in on them, and we had it broadcasted live through YouTube. Anybody that remotely logged in was not able to participate in the actual meeting. They could listen, but their participation was not something that they were able to do. If that is something that the board wanted to do to allow the people who were not able to or did not want to attend live meetings in person to be able to participate through Zoom, we need an extra body to monitor that and to be able to do that. Right now, with the current staffing, us being understaffed and the roles that the town administrator and the clerk take, we don't have the capacity to be able to do all of that at once. And so that's a decision that needs to be made. My suggestion is right now, because we don't have somebody up front who's able to do that, and we don't have anybody that we can for certain say can continuously do that, is for the foreseeable future, we can put the owl in, we can have it be live streamed to YouTube, we can have those meetings saved, but not allow for the people who are logging in remotely to participate in the meetings. And then in the near future, if we have somebody that can dedicate their time and be present and be reliable, we can reconsider, but for right now, we just don't have that capacity to do that.
Thank you, Vika. And one thing, would you check with MMA just to make sure that we're on level ground to even let people participate? Because that was initially, one of us had to be home for being sick or something, and then people could participate. And we talked about it, but I think, and they did loosen things up for a while, but I have no idea what the status is right now. As we go back into trying to come up with the new normal, I don't know how many, whether the town of Shebig still, we have not declared ourselves not in an emergency, so we're still in an emergency. But as the state of Maine changes things, we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly. So if you could check that out sometime in the next couple, when you have 5 minutes, or get Kathy or somebody.
I'll send them an email tomorrow.
Yeah. Bo, you had your hand up.
You took my question away.
Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of thought you might be asking that. So I was trying to hog the questions. All right. Anybody else have a question about how this is going to work, or anybody in the public? I mean, it's better than what it was before the pandemic. Anything that we do that the public can participate, can even see, even after the fact, is better than what we did before. Mark?
So I take it we're deciding tonight to go back to in-person meetings as of March 16th.
Right. What about next Wednesday for the budget hearing? The budget meeting?
That's a good point.
What do you guys want to do? Do you want to go to the hall next Wednesday, or do you want to do it on Zoom?
I'm a definite yes.
I wonder why.
You want to go to the hall, Bo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
I'm
everybody
fine.
else okay with that? Jen, you okay with that?
Yeah.
How about you, Jay?
Yep.
Okay.
The
And-
one comment I do want to add to that is we haven't confirmed with the hall if next Wednesday is an okay time for us to meet. So my suggestion would be, preliminary, let's focus on that. And if that's something that you want to do, great. But if something changes, then we'll send out an email, but we'll check in with that.
Chris has her hand up.
I just wanted to say that I'll check with the hall about next Wednesday.
Okay, great. Thank you. And, get back to us and it'll be published if we're not at the hall. But we welcome everyone to come because we have had very few people at our budget hearings. And I know that a lot of you are very concerned about how much money we're spending, and you're missing out on us spending hundreds and thousands of dollars and millions of dollars you could be coming and having comments about. So it's better to come during the time when we're actually talking about it than to wait till town meeting. So any of you who, are concerned or want to advocate that we spend more money, please come. All right, so we killed that one. The next is, so the regular business items are over. We're now going to have a budget workshop, then we'll go back into communications, do the minutes, and then eventually end up in executive session. But please, we're still in public session. We're just going into a less formal workshop mode. You still have, in order to speak, you still have to go through the chair. So I don't really know what the difference is between a workshop and regular business, except we're not going to make any, nothing's voted on. All right, so Vika, I'm going to turn it over to you. This is to discuss the fire department budget.
All right, so I'm just going to do a very quick run through. I had with the fire department, there was the initial request to have a very significant budget increase of over $60,000. And that basically put us in the position where the board couldn't make any decisions. We went back to the scratching board, and I was asked to look into more detail of how the money is distributed within the fire department, and then look at comparative towns in our size of where they stand within the budget. And so compiling all of that information over the last couple of weeks, what I did is I provided a proposed breakdown to the fire department to try to kind of meet in the middle from where the initial proposal was to where we could potentially find a compromise. And so with the budget, the proposed budget initially for the fiscal year 2023 for the fire department and EMS wages was $172,000, which was over a $60,000 increase from previous years. What I went through is I tried breaking it down, and I am recommending a $60,000 proposed budget, which is a difference of about $100,000 or a little bit more. And so it is broken down by the different stipends, the hourly pays. The one thing is the fire department chief proposed, the biggest thing was we are lacking volunteers and EMTs. The good news is we do have a number of people who are now getting trained to be EMTs. And so my understanding, and we do have a lot of fire department who is present tonight, they can speak for it when the time is allowed, that by August, hopefully those people will be able to join on the calls. And so based on the current, based on the original proposal and the recommended proposal, what the price difference is, what we're doing is we are increasing. My recommendation is with the fire chief and the EMT chief versus having him be a $5,500 stipend and then hourly pay for his calls or other things, to have it be a set $15,000 stipend. The fire department administrative assistant averaged that to 5 hours a week, because we have been budgeted for 8 hours a week, but the average has been less than 5. So I'm suggesting 5. We have had a number of people who have been getting paid $25 for a 12-hour shift and $50 for 48-hour shift for our EMTs who are on call. So the on-call payments is broken down. Fire department stipends is something that are determined by the fire chief. So that number is very similar to the number of the stipends that we gave out the last year. This year, but within December, that was given out. And so my suggestion is that the fire chief can make the decisions on the stipend, but have them be issued based on the number of calls that are that the volunteers attend on. So it's appealing for them to receive those. The hourly pay for volunteers this is what I did is at the request of the fire chief, because of our per diem that he is asking to hire at $25 an hour to have it be an appealing position. The fire chief also asked to have all of our volunteers, when they are going on an on-call, to have them be bumped up to $25 an hour. And so the hourly pay for volunteers is whether they're an EMS or a firefighter. If they're going at an on-call, they would receive $25 an hour for attending that call. With the per diem position, the request was significantly higher. With the recommendation that I made was to budget for 25 hours a week for per diem at $25 an hour for 16 weeks. And hopefully what that would do is that would put us to the position of when the current EMTs that are getting trained would be qualified to be able to go on calls. So I know that's kind of a lot of information. So if you guys want to throw questions out at me, please, by all means, do so. And like I said, we do have a number of the fire department who are present in the audience who could probably can weigh in, including our fire chief.
Speaker, I'd like to thank you for that, for analyzing and going through and really thinking about how this this department works. And it's an area that we have, you know, probably somebody needed to do this in the past, but it sounds as if you've got a handle on it. And I would assume that, you know, going forward, that will collect the data and, you know, update us if this plan doesn't really work. So thank you for taking that initiative. So anyone on the board who would like to ask Vika a question about her recommendation for the fire department's wages part-time section? Okay, Bo.
Have you gone through these numbers with Ralph?
So I have had a number of conversations back and forth with Ralph. I did have a conversation with Steve about the breakdown that I did for my recommendation. I did send out Ralph an email telling him that I was going to be here after 5 o'clock. Ralph did make an attempt to stop in, but I was running a little late, so I didn't have a chance to personally talk to him, but I know him and Steve have had a conversation about it, and he actually has his hand raised if you want to include him on the conversation.
Okay, I will in just a minute. Are anyone else on the board have any questions of Vika before I recognize Ralph? Okay, no one? Okay, Ralph. Vika's going to make you a panelist.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so I know Vika had contacted some of the islands down east, like Swans Island, Vinyl Haven, North Haven. I was just wondering, what I wanted to ask her earlier is, what did she find out there? What were the questions and what were the numbers she got?
Okay, thank you.
So what I did is we contacted Islesboro, Swans, Long Island, North Haven, and another one, North Haven. There were 4 of them. And so based on the information that we received, we had spoken to either their office staff or the fire chiefs directly. And the current budget, not the proposed budget, but the current budget that we stand at for the current year is very similar in line to where other towns are. As far as the breakdowns of what the fire chief, the assistant chief, the volunteers and so forth get, you know, the numbers were slightly shifted depending on the different towns, but they were very similar to where we can't currently stand. And so that's kind of where I based my proposal off of, where the current towns that we researched, the current budget that exists within the town of Shebig, the proposed budget that originally came into place. And so I tried kind of coming in between and in the middle of all of that. And I do have, Ralph, and you know, I'm sorry I wasn't here at 5 o'clock like I said I was going to be. I was running a little late, but I do have all that information gathered from all the different towns, if that's something that you're interested in seeing.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, do you realize that that like Swans Island Fire Chief is the fire chief, and there's also an EMS chief, and that's the same with Pownell, North Haven, Islesboro, and Vinyl Haven in Monhegan as well. Because I agree with your numbers if you're only looking at the fire chief, but I am the fire difference. Just the first island, just to throw it out there, Swans Island has a population of 350 people. The fire chief, Robert Gardner, he gets paid $6,500 a year. He's only the fire chief. That's about 20% of the calls that they go on. They also have an EMS chief who gets paid $4,000. They go on significantly less calls than we do, and they actually pay their volunteers considerably more than what we're proposing. And we can go through all of them when we meet if you want to, but it's the same with all of them. North Haven has their fire chief is paid $10,000. They have a deputy chief at $4,000, and the EMS chief gets $7,500. And they do 50 to 55 calls a year. We normally do around 120. This year we were a little lower. We did 85 calls and 65 of them were EMS. So, I mean, if you take North Haven, who has a population of 417, and they do, for some reason, significantly less calls than we do. I mean, if you just look at the fire chief and the EMS chief together, which is my title, they're looking at $17,500 plus going on calls. So I think we could meet at what I proposed at 10,000 plus going on calls, being paid for that. But did you know that fire and EMS was separate in all these towns?
Yes, I did know that, and I took those numbers into consideration. And like I said, where we stand with our current budget and where the proposed budget are, we still are running significantly higher than other fire department and EMS budgets in other towns, and that's where the compromise kind of came in the middle. The other thing that we looked into is, you know, the longevity of the fire chiefs, and a lot of these personnel is on there. So I don't want to make it seem like we cut short in anywhere. We did a lot of information. We talked to people. There was a lot of extensive, probably 2 full days work that went into talking of different people, fire chiefs and so forth. So I gathered significant amount of information on this. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort to try to come up with a recommendation to try to make it fair, because of such a drastic, significant $70,000 jump that was initially proposed.
Yep, I look forward to sitting down, comparing notes, because I did call all the islands, and I spent a lot of time. We spent like over 2 weeks on the phone talking to all the chiefs. And I mean, the numbers to me, if we went through with the proposed budget, we would, by my numbers, we're still on the low end of things. We do more calls than some of the islands per capita, but I would definitely, I think we need to sit down and talk. We need to.
I think that's a
really
great idea. I think a lot of this, that probably for this, especially your position, Ralph, you and Vika need to sit down and you need to see the topics. What I'd like to do is, kind of look at some of the other aspects as well as to make sure, to see if we're in line or if you guys need more discussion on those areas as well. One of my questions, I guess, Vika, how much did we spend on this past year on wages part-time? It's hard to know, right? Because
Can you repeat the question? You broke out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the budget was 49,770, but we haven't finished the year yet. So that's like 50,000. So we've gone up 17,000. What we're suggesting is 17,000 more than we had in 2022. So that's a significant increase right there. So what are some of the other areas, and do we need to have a discussion on that? Or is there anybody on here who wants to talk to Ralph before we go to the next part of this? And I want Ralph to stay on because he's got information about that. Anyone have any other questions?
Donna, this is Steve. Donna, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is tonight the appropriate, like if we had suggestions on modifications to what Vika is proposing, is this the proper evening?
I think you should both sit down with Vika probably. I think this is more for information.
Okay. All right. And then, so we would definitely would want to sit down, and there's parts to Vika's recommendation that we really like, but we have some suggestions and modifications that we would want to make. One question I would have to Vika is, it looks like when you said the per diems, you were talking about maybe 25 hours or approximately 2 days for the per diems. And the fire department's original request was for 3 days. What was the purpose to reduce the coverage to save money, or was there other reasons to reduce it from 3 days to 2 days?
So one of the reasons that I dropped it down to that particular amount is, like I said, because of the research with other particular towns. And from going through all of the paperwork that we have in the office, the fairly new fire department administrative assistant that you, Steve, sit in, was kind of the contributing factor in that. In other towns similar in size, they have the fire chief and EMS chief. Most of them are combined positions. They have volunteers.
Actually,
with the fire department administrative assistant, my understanding that the reason this position came into place many years ago was because the fire chief needed some additional help. And so looking at the research that I had done, it just seems like, if we're going to be hiring somebody who is per diem, who is going to be working 25 hours a week at the fire department, the numbers that you gave me, it's they're not going to be going on call every single day. If they're not going to be doing administrative work that you're doing right now, what are they going to be doing? And do we need to have somebody, and are they going to have full workload of work to do, or are they just going to be sitting there in the fire department waiting? And so I know that we had a per diem that we hired that was budgeted for in the current budget. And once we stopped using, once we ran out of that time frame that what the selectmen accounted for, my understanding is we're still paying somebody else to do that, even though the time frame of that particular
No.
position has run out. And so I just wanted to kind of cap on it and try to make sure that it was a little bit more controlled, but also not overcompensate for it, because what is the person going to be doing there if they're there 3 days a week, 12 hours a day for 16 weeks? So I kind of met in the middle of 25 hours a week.
Ralph would like to give you a little option on what that person would be doing.
So virtually every department out there that has per diems, they have a work schedule. They have to come in and they do an ambulance check, do a truck check, and they clean the station. That's pretty much every per diem that I've ever talked to, and I've talked to a lot of chiefs across the country. That's what they do. They're not there to do administrative work. That's completely separate. The rest of the time, absolutely. If there's something that comes up that needs to be taken care of, they may be able to work on it. But there is a lot of downtime. The big thing here that everybody needs to understand in this town, it's very important, is it's not about the calls, it's about the coverage. So we cover 24/7. Oh, that's what we try to do. And the volunteers are having a hard time and they overtasked with that. And we're losing one of the members again this year. And so we won't have these new people until end of July, 1st August, we're hoping. But even if we put everything through that I asked for, just as it was, there's still no guarantee that we're going to have an EMT show up on every call. And without an EMT on an EMS call, we cannot respond. So everybody needs to realize that. So there's been a lot of times over the years that I've been the only EMT. It happens all the time, that I'm the only EMT on the call, and I'm only one on the island for 24 hours. Something happens to me or something happens to my wife and I have to go to the hospital or something, there would be no EMS coverage. So it's not a perfect system, but we've made it work all these years. But I think people really need to understand that. And Steve had one thing.
Yeah, and so I guess I would just be caution on the, I mean, obviously we can't spend money that we don't have. I realize that. But as from the fire department's perspective, our goal is to keep the public safe. So I would really want to relook at the per diem usage. I know we have EMTs in training right now. We're very fortunate for the volunteers that have decided to become EMTs, and we're grateful for them. It's going to be some time till the end of the summer before we get those people fully trained and certified. So I guess my goal or our department's goal would be to make sure that we have per diems available for the time while these people are being trained to get us through the summer into the fall. So if we can come up with an estimate of number of weeks that we estimate that we need the per diems, I'm sorry, then I think we should really look at that. Again, we might not be very far off, because based on the initial conversations that I had with Vika, I don't think we're really far off. But I would really like to look at the stipend for Ralph and the potential for keeping him on hourly, because I can really say that, as I drive the ambulance, or Doug Ross drives the ambulance, and there's been times, okay, that Doug or I have been in the ambulance and we've been waiting for an EMT to arrive. In fact, it happened not too long ago that both Doug and I were in the ambulance together without an EMT. And the protocol, because Doug and I are not EMTs, that ambulance cannot leave the station without an EMT heading to the scene. So even though Doug and my intentions are there and we would like to help someone, but that ambulance cannot go to call without an EMT. And Doug and I have been worried on occasion for that. So we just don't want to be in that position. We want to be able to help people and rescue people. So again, we do realize we can't get past the money thing. We have to work through this. But I think we're pretty close. And I think that if Ralph and myself and Vika could sit down, I think we could come up with a few adaptations. And maybe that's not the right word, but I think we can come up with a few things that would really work.
Yeah, one other thing, just to clarify, none of the islands that we've talked about have a fire and EMS chief combined. We're the only one other than Long Island.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I think that part of the problem what you're not seeing is we are in a unique situation. Most of the departments, the fire chiefs are not necessarily active in EMS. And I wouldn't want to, have Ralph paid a super, nothing against you, Ralph, a super high stipend, and then not have Ralph be part of the EMS team. I think that would be a mistake for our island, for the amount of calls that he's gone on. I wouldn't want to remove, it would be detrimental to remove an EMS team member. And I think we should keep that in play.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I just want to clarify before I open it up again. We created the assistant position a few years ago, as Vika alluded to, because Ralph felt he needed support for his, for the paperwork part of the job. And so the idea was at that time, we took that off from Ralph's plate. And initially, I believe it was 15 hours a week that we budgeted for. And then it went to 15 hours every 2 weeks. And now we're down to 10 hours every 2 weeks. And so are we getting less paperwork? I mean, is that an issue? I'm just raising issue.
Well,
this is.
I don't remember it being that way.
I can be honest with you too, Donna. I mean, I've been pretty busy lately, so.
Well, no, I understand that. I'm not arguing or anything. I'm just trying to identify what the issues are so that we can, so that you guys will, have some things to talk about.
You did ask me before about it, and I told you where I was as far as the number of hours that I work. But is there work that I need to do that, that I could, if I went into the fire office and sat in the desk, is there anything I need to do? Absolutely. So it's just.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out. It's Ralph having to do more paperwork, so we can understand better what.
No, there's definitely paperwork and administrative work that needs to be done. There's no question about it. It's just a matter of trying to balance and get all the work done in the different tasks that I currently do.
Okay, so I guess what I'm thinking is, we thought, when I reviewed what Vika had written here, I thought, we basically tripled Ralph's stipend. So I thought that was helpful, but I understand, the other issues involved. And the other thing is, we looked at bringing all of the current EMTs up to the same rate as the people who, the per diems that come over, and thinking that would be helpful. And it seems like that, basically there's a certain amount of money and you guys need to probably sit down and figure it out, how to make it work. But I think that we all agree that what we're doing, what's in this year's budget, the current budget probably is not enough. And what was requested maybe is more than the town can pay for. Vika's come up with something in between. Okay, so now I want to turn it over to the rest of the board and then see if there's anybody in the audience who has a question. We're not evaluating people. We're not evaluating the work that they're doing. That's not the intention here. We're trying to figure out how do we distribute the money the best way that we can. Do you have your hand up, Jay?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Anyone else on the board want to say anything? Bo?
What was the original request as far as the part-time wage?
For which particular one? The per diem?
For the whole thing?
No, 1010, line item 1010.
So the original, hold on, I get all this paper in front of me.
68,652.
Yeah, so the initial 1010 budget line request for the 2023, the initial request was 172,622.
Okay.
Was
And
that for the whole budget? Was that for the whole fire department budget or just the?
No, that was just for the increase in, oh, wait, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I'm looking at a completely different thing.
Yeah,
told
that's
you
what I
have
was
two
thinking.
different-
You know, I don't.
Yeah, no, my bad. I was looking at a completely different thing. Sorry. So the initial one was 118,422. So that was an increase of $68,652 from what the current year budgeted line item was.
So
So
it's
you're
50,000
more than doubling
more.
it.
50,000 more. Okay.
$68,000 more than the current year's budget.
Okay. All right.
So essentially the $68,000 more was to pay for the per diem to come over for 3 days.
So the per
Most-
diem the initial request was for the per diem to be a year-long position at
Mhm.
3 days a week at 12 hours a day, which was eating up a huge chunk, over $50,000 of that. And what, based on the paperwork that I sent off of, you know, the, when
Like you're
Ralph
missing
and
that?
Steve met a lot and talked about this, they came back and they, Steve gave me the paperwork saying that they could probably work at 3 days a week at 12 hours a day for 16
Yeah.
weeks until the new EMTs could come into play. And so I took that number and looked at other towns who are in similar size. And that's where instead of doing, 3 days a week at 12 hours, I took 25 hours a week for
Not yet.
16 weeks and kind of came in the middle with that.
I understand your math. What I don't like is the roll of the dice. I don't like gambling. He's trying to put a number in that's solid, a solid number that we can go by, that we have something to go by, or we have something to back it up. And we're and your numbers hoping that we get these EMT or EMS people certified.
Well, and when Steve and Ralph, after they talked, Steve, the paperwork that he presented me was, we could compromise with, instead of doing it a year-long position, it would be 16 weeks. And that's where that idea came from. It wasn't something that I came up with myself. It was that recommendation off of the questions that I asked Steve and Ralph to provide me. And so I don't think it's gambling. I think it's looking at the research that I was asked to do and comparing the information of what they were asking in comparison to other towns and kind of meeting in the middle, knowing and understanding that we're already significantly higher in budget where other towns are comparative in size. And there's also no guarantee that we have or will have an EMT lined up to be able to do this work. So I think there is a lot of different things that are kind of coming into play in all of this all at once.
Avika?
Just a second. We've got to go. You have to go through the chair. Bo's still talking. Just a minute.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No problem.
So I'm not trying to insult you or anything like that by the comment I made. I didn't want to offend anybody. I'm just like Ralph said or Steve said, I'm just concerned about the coverage. And I'd rather have, is that the right money? I don't know. I can't tell you that. But I think between you and Ralph and Steve sitting down and talking, we can come up with a reasonable compromise that Ralph will be happy with, that Steve will be happy with, and you will be happy with, to present us with a number. And so thank you for all you guys, your work on this. Thank you.
Bo, I think that what the question is the redistribution of money. You know, I mean, if we went back to paying the EMTs that are on the island, $16, you know what I mean? It's like, it's one of those things where all of a sudden, you know, when I look at this, every line went up. It wasn't just like, okay, we want to have a raise for the chief. We want to have a raise for the EMTs. We want to have a raise for the firefighters. We want to have more people. You know what I'm saying? It's just, so we got to figure that out. And I think you're right, having them go back and try to look at it. Yes.
As far as a raise and stuff, I'll put it to you this way. Nobody wants to do some of the dirty jobs that I do. And I definitely don't want to do the dirty jobs that they do.
Right.
So just
Right.
put it that way from me. My
That's why it
perspective.
seemed like it was reasonable to go to $25 an hour.
We do have a couple people in the audience with their hands raised when the selectmen are done.
Okay, so I think Steve wanted to say something, and then we're going to go to Jackie and then Tracy.
Ralph and Steve, you guys are still unmuted if you want to go ahead.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Bo, for those words. Totally. I think that also I wanted to point out, again, we can talk about this when we meet directly, but I do think that there's been some we've had some misunderstanding as far as the length of time that we felt that we needed per diems. And so I think that when Justin presented some of the numbers, Justin presented them as we needed them for a full year. I believe that there was a misunderstanding with some of that. So I think we can work through that, though it's not really critical that we need to talk about it tonight, but I think that we definitely can work through some of it.
Thank you very much. Okay, Jackie and then Tracy.
Jackie, you should be all set.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was thinking back to what Steve described, that, you know, I gather there have been situations or have there been situations where you and Doug are, you know, in the rig and there's no EMT. And so that causes me to ask a couple questions. I'm guessing that, you know, you have a schedule of EMTs who are scheduled for a certain, we'll call it shift. So maybe you would know ahead of time that there are whole EMT holes in the system, so to speak. And maybe that's where the request for the per diems comes in. And I guess the second point is, how often does that situation present itself where there's no EMT available?
Thank you, Jackie. That's a good question. Just for a clarification, was it that you had to wait for the EMT, Steve, or the EMT never came and called and someone never received a call? Because I've not heard that there was ever anybody that didn't get responded to, but maybe that's happened. And if so, as Jackie asked, how often?
So I can answer that question. There has never been a call since I've been chief, since 2008, that we have not had an EMT respond to. Sometimes delayed because of radio traffic and childcare or whatever, but
Yeah.
we've always had somebody respond.
That's what I thought, Ralph. I just want to make sure that no one went out of here tonight thinking.
So that's very reassuring.
Also,
I mean, I'm serious when I say that, because I was stunned to know that, you know, rescue might not be able to respond due to the lack of an EMT.
I
Thank
think
you.
what Ralph's trying to say is, and Steve, is that the people, they have a limited pool and that those people are getting kind of tired and burned out.
Yeah,
And-
life happens.
And that's why, you know, last year or the year before, whenever we started doing the per diems in the summer to give people a break, to make sure there was somebody on and they could have a break. And I think it's just wonderful, all these people who have volunteered to take these classes and, and the idea that maybe now we could have a couple of days a week that we would have coverage, especially in the summer when it's the busiest. Tracy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I am agreeing with what Vika's proposing about the hourly wage for per diems, and the volunteers being the same, just because, from experience, my grandfather was an EMT, like the head of the EMT in the town that they lived in. And they increased wages for the per diems, but didn't increase for the volunteers. And the majority of their volunteer staff got done as soon as that happened. And I just wouldn't want that to happen out here. I feel like the volunteer crew that we have is really reliable, and that they're like doing things that other people obviously wouldn't want to be doing. So I think it would be really important to keep them at a fair wage as what the per diems are doing.
Tracy, I just want to clarify that that's a proposal that actually our fire chief came forward with, and I just did the crunching of the numbers. It was Ralph who made the suggestion that if we're going to be paying a per diem, that we should level that out and give that same amount to the volunteers. So I want to give him that credit, not take it myself.
Anything else, Tracy?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in on that. Yeah, we want to treat everybody the same. That's great. All right, anyone else? Ralph, you still have your hand up? Do you guys still have a question or comment?
You guys are good to talk if you want to talk.
No, we're all good for now.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody on the board? Have Bo's weighed in? Jay, and then Mark.
As I've been listening this evening, and my wife, who was an EMT for 30 years, it's all been about money. And, are we running a volunteer service or are we running a paid service?
I think we're paying, we're running a paid service. You're right.
If we want a paid service, then let's bite the bullet and set that up. If we're going to have a volunteer service where people are doing it because they want to, they love the community, they like what they're doing, that's something else. But I think that, as we sit here and talk about how much we're going to pay people, that rings job to me. It rings not volunteer, it's a job. And I think we have to figure out how we want to approach this.
No, it's a good observation. And if it's a job, and if, whether it's the fire chief, the lieutenant, or whomever, we need if we're going to have it be a job, then the town administrator needs to be evaluating them, and we need timesheets, which are every 2 weeks, we need people to put in timesheets. And, there's a lot that goes with it, and a lot that people are going to think about. Mark, you're next.
Yeah, it sounds to me like this community is reaching, kind of a crossroads with its EMS coverage, which does become ultimately a philosophical conversation at some point, just like Jay said, and maybe we're getting closer than we realized. Ralph and his department proposed a budget of $190,237. Vika has suggested to us a budget of $138,925. So without getting down into the weeds of, the stipend for the chief, stipends for the volunteers, the hourly rate, and the stipend coverage and hours, which I don't think we need to be doing. I hope that by next week, which is Wednesday the 9th, that we can have a firm recommendation number total to run this department. I don't mean to be insensitive to Ralph and Steve's comments, because I fully hear where they're coming from. I don't mean to be insensitive about just calling everything numbers. I appreciate all of the service that people have given, people continue to give, and people intend to give if they pass, especially EMT courses. So I hope that we can come to a budget that we can push forward with the other departmental budgets. But a budget that goes up 62% is not a small thing to present to the community all at once. So, we do have a responsibility fiscally to the taxpayer. So if we can come up with something that is going to make this thing operate, something that has better administrative and payroll management documentation, then I think we can get past this for now. If we have to have bigger conversations moving forward as a community, I hope that we continue to have those. If we have to move towards more of a paid service. Thank you, Donna.
Yep, you're welcome. I guess for me, I, having grown up here, and I saw so many people over the years, and always thought of these services as volunteers and maybe took them for granted. But in this community, we've always run by volunteers who were volunteers. I didn't realize actually how much money people were actually getting. And not that I begrudge that, because they deserve it. But I think the time has come that we call people part-time workers, as opposed, and with whatever status that comes with it, instead of calling people volunteers. Because I think that's where we're getting mixed up here. We're thinking of, if we're thinking of people as volunteers, then then maybe that's why we're not putting the value that should be taken, and we're taking it for granted. So anyway, Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment kind of along those same lines, Donna. It's not just, my grandfather's rescue or my grandfather's fire department anymore, where, they could just go to some firemen's suppers and go to some trainings and whatever. There's a lot to this, whether it's, training and qualification and protocols and liabilities and state mandates. And, I just think that it's become so much bigger than it ever used to be. And with that comes a price tag. That's just, the way life is. I was curious to know, Vika, in your research, maybe Ralph's research, because of all these things, do most departments now have, the office assistant that takes care of all the paperwork? Because there's got to be a ton of paperwork with this stuff too. And I was just curious if it, is the 4.5 hours, is that what it was, a week that we have set, is that enough? I know that's the average, but are the communications getting out there within the departments okay? And are is that enough time for all the liabilities and protocols and all the stuff that you have to have in now that the state requires? Is that enough time to get that done? So I just think we need to take that into consideration too.
Jen, to comment on that, what at the last budget year, it was budgeted at 8 hours a week. And so what I did is I went through every single timesheet that Steve had, and I took the average, and that's how I got the average of 4.8 hours. And that's where I made the recommendation of 5 hours a week. But I think ultimately the decision of whether that's enough or should it be more, I think that's where it falls, within the fire department, fire chief and his employee or his department to make that decision. And he actually has, Ralph and Steve have their hand up again. If the selectmen want to give them a minute to comment.
Just to follow up on what Jen had for a question about the other towns. When you called those other towns, did they have administrative assistants or did the chief or some officer do it in the fire department?
Well, for example, Swans, they had a chief that got $6,500, assistant chief got $3,000. They did a lot of fundraising, so they fundraised $70,000 a year to cover a lot of their costs. Let's see, where's the other one? Islesboro, they had a fire chief who's been there for over 35 years. Their fire department, on call, they get a stipend, trainings, they get a stipend. And so I think every department is similar, but slightly different. So I think that's just how their roles are distributed. Long Island, I think, is similar to ours, but they kind of divvy it up a little bit different. They have a fire admin assistant who gets $3,000 a year. So I think every town's a little different, but similar in their own in their own ways.
I guess I always thought of the stipend as what you gave somebody who was a volunteer to show appreciation, and that was it. But it sounds to me like we've gone to a hybrid where we're getting stipends and hourly, and that's hard to track. And so maybe that's something we need to be thinking about too is, do we just go to hourly and not, with a certain amount, like you say, okay, 10 hours a week for the chief or, whatever, I'm just making stuff up, but as opposed to just coming up with, numbers, because as Jennifer said, we're not the wonderful fire department that we grew up with, which was much more casual. And they were happy to get $500 a year or whatever, because that was kind of their hobby. But this is a different kind of thing. So, I don't know if that was it, but this hybrid isn't working, because what happened last year is we had people who got stipends who then, maybe got $10,000 or $15,000 on top of their stipends. And so how do you budget for that? And so, that's difficult. Okay. So, Ralph, you guys want to speak again? And then we're going to start wrapping this up because we need to go on.
Ralph, you guys are all set if you have something you want to say.
We each have something to say. Ralph will go first. So the first thing to Jay's comment is, I think what we're doing is working. I think that this is evolving. Every department in the country and outside of this country is dealing with these same issues, and they're dealing with them the same and different at the same time. Just so you know, just to get an idea of how much the volunteers that are they're paid volunteers by definition, how much they are saving this town. If you had one position at $25 an hour, now that's a 24/7 position. So to have one EMT paid at $25 an hour, just one, and you can't do anything with just one person, that's $219,000 a year just for one. So think about that for a minute. So think about how much these paid volunteers are saving the taxpayers of this island. That's a lot of friggin' money. Swans Island, they do have the fire chief, they have an EMS chief, and then they have a fire assistant. The chief gets paid $6,500, the EMS chief gets $4,000, and the assistant gets 2,000. And we can go down through, Vika mentioned Islesboro. They have a fire and EMS chief. They also have a person, so the chief may not be in charge of the whole department, but the person that oversees the department, they have, I can't remember what the title is. It's the emergency management something, public safety officer. He gets paid $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So just to oversee both departments. So I think once Vika and Steve and I sit down, I think we're gonna, when we compare notes, I think we can come to an agreement here. I think we are on the low end of things, what we're asking for. I think we can both make some adjustments, but I want to make sure everybody knows that the paid volunteers, as much as I'm asking for, we're still saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Just so you know that the EMS captain on Shabig back in 2006, that was Marlene, she gets paid just to be the EMS captain. She didn't have to do any of the administrative stuff at all. She got paid more in 2006 than I'm getting paid now. And I'm in charge of both departments, not just one. So,
Ralph, we were recommending you go up to 15,000.
no, I think I should, what I'm asking for is 10,000 to be the chief and then paid per call. I think that's a fair way to do it. But Vika and Steve and I can talk about that. I think doing it another way could definitely be detrimental. Also, I'm not going to be the chief forever, and the next person coming in, I think that would have a detrimental effect on the whole department, and I think that would eventually cost the island a lot more money, potentially.
Well, then, if that happens, we've got to have more accountability, and every 2 weeks, people have got to do time sheets. We can't just wait.
We do time sheets every week, Donna.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they need to go to the office. Listen, we're in the minutia here.
I can segue my last comment, I guess, if that's okay.
Yep.
It's kind of spawning off of Jay's comment as far as, do we need to go to a full-time department or not? I would say, please don't make no mistake about it. There might be a time at some point where our department may need a full-time employee. That certainly might be needed at some point. But please make no mistake about it. We truly are a volunteer department. And so far, all the discussions that we've been talking about are on-call times and when people are getting paid. But one of the things that we haven't talked about is all the volunteer time that our members give out. We don't get paid for training. A department member, an EMT or a fire member does not get paid to train. Our new EMT members that are starting have to go through 16 weeks of training. 16 weeks, think about that. And that they're not getting paid for that. That is truly a volunteer. And to pay them for the hour of service that they come in on a call, that is perfectly fine. That does not change the fact that we're still a volunteer fire department. And things cost money. Our equipment costs money, our medicine costs money. So those are all things that are in our budget. But we're a licensed agency. This is the real deal. And it costs money to be a licensed agency. But please, if you want to track, I keep track. We do timesheets for whenever people are on training. And whenever our firefighters get trained, we have timesheets. So if people want me to report on the total number of volunteer hours that our department members give, we have that data. And so we can definitely tell you how many volunteer hours our members give to the town. And we have that data because we make them fill out a timesheet for when they're going for training. And that is time that the town is not paying for. And we have dedicated members that donate their time and fix things and do things. So we have an incredible volunteer base. Again, please make no mistake about it. We truly are a volunteer department. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We truly appreciate what you guys do. Okay, anybody else have a question or comment? So Mark,
I'm just gonna reiterate that next Wednesday, my goal from Vika would be that we have a working number for a total not budget number to run this department next week. Right now, you got two numbers, one that they propose, one that you propose. I would like to have a number sooner rather than later, Vika, if we can. Thank you.
and Vika, I totally appreciate all the work that you've done to try to work this out. And I think that one thing that maybe not just for the fire department, but for any department, when it might be good if we think about things in when we're going to have, when we see things happening, that we come up with like a 3 to 5 year plan of where do we want to be 5 years from now and how are we going to get there? As opposed to, I think that's maybe the sticker shock when it's such a dramatic increase in one time. And so maybe that can be not during this budget season, but maybe over the next year, you do some strategic planning and come up with some kind of a 3 to 5 year plan of where you think the fire department should be. And that way the board can start thinking about it and incrementally, help to get there. So it's not such a dramatic increase. That's just a thought that sometimes people do that. Anybody else? Okay, anybody in the audience? All right, and don't think because we're asking questions that we don't appreciate everything that you guys do and all of the people on the rescue and the fire department. Because we do. Thank you. All right, next thing on the agenda. Communications. I had one that I forwarded to the Board of Selectmen. It was a handout that was part of that COG meeting that I went to with chairs. It was kind of, I thought it was interesting, meaningful. I hope that everybody got it. It was kind of difficult to share, but I think I did it. Anybody else have anything that they want to share? Any communications? All right, seeing none. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes from February 16th, 2022?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, we had one, so both said so moved, so I'm saying Jay is seconded, right?
Fine.
Yeah, your internet was slower than Bo's at the rec center. All right, we're gonna do a quick roll call vote. Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Bo?
Yes.
And I'm yes, it's unanimous. All right, items to be placed on a future agenda. We had quite a long list last week, but we know that at the next meeting, Wright Pierce is going to give their final report. They'll do a presentation on the stability. And as we said, if you have questions with that, please get them to Vika on Monday or by Monday. Anything else? Vika.
I have a proposal from our code enforcement officer about fee changes.
Okay. Can you send that out? I know it will be in the packet, but maybe send it out a little bit sooner so we can have time to look at it.
Yeah, but he forwarded it to me so I can just turn around and send it all to you guys.
Okay, great. All right, anything else? Jen?
Sorry. This is not to be put on a future agenda, but we were supposed to decide about the truck going to the truck show. Did that ever get like poo-pooed? I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I emailed him back and I raised lots of questions and I think he just didn't want to deal with the questions. So he said, I think the logistics of it coming from the island is too much. So no thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we did have a little glitch with, it broke down again, but they got it fixed. I think Vika probably could report, but so that's another reason not to have it go off again if we don't have to. We don't want anything to happen to it. All right. Anything else? Okay, seeing none. So I guess it's time, Mark.
Don, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to 4056A and 4056C for real estate and personnel.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. A quick roll call vote. Jen,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
and Mark.
Yes.
Okay, thank you everyone who's still on here.